Morgen, Woch, everybody. Continuation of the last shir which we had together about the problems of ribis, the problems which can come about by different transactions which people do between each other. And we spoke about the problems, but we didn't speak about how to solve the problems. And Mr. Shem, now we will discuss the classical Heta Iske, as it's known, which solves a lot of the problems which people come across during their, nearly one could say, daily life in their business dealings between Yidden. Now, Bizman HaGemara, the time of the Gemara, there was already amongst the Chachomim, they realized that people were not so willing to give free loans. People didn't want to give money, lend money, and not get anything in return. People wanted to invest their money in a way of making money. So the Chachomim at that time came up with some sort of arrangement where a person could actually invest. One person would want to borrow, and the other person would invest, but he would get some return on his money. At the time of the Gemara, it was a perfectly kosher deal. It was called an iska. An iska was a partnership. In other words, the money provider, we call him the money provider, the Baal Hamois, as he's known as in the Lashon HaGemara, he would actually invest, and the misasik, the worker, would actually do the work. And how was that arranged? That was arranged as follows. The money provider would provide 100% of the money needed would provide 100% of the money needed for the business, and the worker would do 100% of the work. How did this become a partnership? What sort of partnership is this? That gives each side 50% of the profits. So the Gemara tells us that Hai Iska, this Iska agreement, is Chatzi Milva and Chatzi Pikadon. That means that the money provider provides 100% of the money, but half of it is a loan.
Hat nicht gezahlt jetzt. Sucht das nicht. Wie gelingt Geister raus?
This idea was that the milva was a half a loan and half a pikadon, which means as follows. If I was the money provider, then I would give 100% of my money, 100%, let's say to the worker. The worker would borrow 50% of the money from me. He would borrow 50%, and the other 50% which I gave him would be my share in the future business, but he wouldn't have any responsibility on it. The worker would have no responsibility. It was a pikadon, as if I gave him money to look after on my behalf. He had 50% complete responsibility on the money which he took as a loan. If somebody borrows money, the borrower of the money is responsible for whatever happens to the money, even if he loses it, or if an onus happens. Once you borrow money, the money belongs to the borrower, and if somebody now owes money, it doesn't make a difference what happens to the money, because the money, it belongs to the person who borrowed it. If I borrow money from the bank, the money is mine, becomes my money, I can do what I like with it, and therefore, if anything happens to it, it happens to my money. Whatever happens to the money is now considered the money. Something has happened to my money. It's my money, and I owe the person who lent me the money. And I can never come back with any excuses that I was robbed of the money or anything like that, because a loiva, somebody who borrows money, has 100% responsibility. So that is the 50% which I borrowed becomes my money. So the worker who was taking the 100% from the money provider, 50% was lent to him. So now he owned 50% of this money. The other 50%, he was looking after it on behalf of the money provider.
As a Schomre, not an investor?
As a Shomre, he was looking after it. He didn't have responsibilities more than a Shomre Chinam. He was a regular, he was looking after it. Now the idea was that he should take this 100% money and invest it in a good deal, in a business. People used to buy something with it. He used to buy, let's say, fruit and sell it. So he used to invest with this money, which was half was his, half was the money provider's, and he would use this money to make a business.
It's all okay if he borrowed the money to make business. It gives a
Return.
yeah, but if you borrow for his private use, he needs money for himself. Like he wants to buy himself a new one. There's no business.
No, absolutely right. We'll see about that in Mitzvah Shem later on. We're now talking about the Zman HaGemara, where there was an actual business going on, and there were the two people involved were partners in the business. One of the very important points is, as you mentioned, this money had to be used for a business deal. He wasn't allowed, the Gemara says, the person who took the money wasn't allowed to take the money and drink beer with it, the Gemara says. He wasn't allowed to go to the cafe and drink beer with it. He had to invest it, because that was the idea, that some profit should be generated from a business deal. The Gemara says other things which we look at this money, that whatever it is, which
And this is from the Picadon or from the...
he's buying with 100% money. The Picadon money, the 50% belongs to the money provider. So therefore when he buys goods, 50% he's investing and 50% the money provider is investing. And then he buys goods, he works with the goods, and when they have profit, HaKadosh Baruch Hu should help them, they have profit, they divide it 50-50. If there were losses, so it was again divided 50-50. Why? Because since the worker borrowed 50%, he has to pay back. He has no excuses. If he borrowed $100, he has to pay back the $100. He can't say, I lost it in a business deal. I don't care what you do with your money. They were automatically partners, 50% in the profit, because each one had put in 50%. And losses had to be divided 50%.
No, but my question is the use of the money, because you said this is my money, I can do whatever.
50%.
On the 50%, but
Yes.
which 50%? The one that belongs...
No, it belongs to him, and he has to use it for an investment. He has to invest. He has to buy a business with it, make business with it. That was the...
But the other 50 he can do whatever.
No, definitely not.
Not for the 100% he
The
can...
100% had to be invested using a business.
Even though it's given us Picadon, still he has to invest.
Picadon means the opposite. Picadon means it belongs to the person who's the money provider. And he gave it to me, let's say I'm the worker, he gave it to me on condition that I invest in business in it. So therefore, that's Bisman HaGemara, yes?
And there is no time frame or not percentage, so that they don't talk about those two things.
Not yet.
A time frame there probably was, that he should, for a certain time, as soon as... There was probably a time, a percentage, God forbid, there was no talking about percentage at that time.
If there is a percentage.
Yeah, there was no percentage. It was a proper partnership. The only problem was this worker who's working. Shouldn't he get paid for doing work? Why is he working for free all of a sudden? He's become a partner with the person who provided the money. So why is he doing all the work? Why is he running the business?
No, because he makes the profit on the part that was not a Picadon.
Though it was lent to him.
Yeah.
But that's ribis. That means he's providing, working for the other man because he lent him money. That's an issa ribis.
But the one who lended him money, he also worked for that money in his...
But now, at the present deal, there's two partners in a new business. There's the person who's working and the person who provided the money. Now, why is the worker working and not getting paid for his work?
It should be agreed.
That
Should be agreed for the deal.
what's going to be agreed? They're not going to get paid
He's
for.
going to get paid for the work or not.
Oh, so that's what you have to bear in mind. That the one who's working has to get something for his work. Because otherwise, if he doesn't get paid, he's working for free for the person who lent him money, which is a ribis. That was all good and fine when people made business, and they were happy, the money provider was happy to accept the risks involved. That maybe the worker would work, do his best, but nevertheless, it would be a possibility of a loss. And if there was loss, he took 50% of the chances of losing the money. So that's all fine, Bismana Gemara, people were happy with it. But later on, people became unhappy with this agreement. And they weren't happy with taking the risk. They wanted the possibility of investing money, as it were, without any risks involved at all. In other words, they didn't want to have to take the possibility of not making profit and not losing their initial 50% investment. They didn't want to take that. Now, how can we work something out like that? That a person, I will provide 100%, and I will be guaranteed to get back my 100%, and also get back profits. That is the big problem of ribbis. If I'm lending somebody money, and he has to pay me back not only the 50% which he borrowed from me, but he also has to pay me back 50% which I gave him as a pikadon, and he has to give me profits, then that means I'm lending him the money, and he's giving me definitely ribbis. That's the rise of ribbis ketzutza. So how are we going to continue? Well, people are going to continue in their quest to be guaranteed the keren, the 100%, and guaranteed profit. That's when the great sages came together about 500 years ago. The Vad Arba Rotzos, which was in Poland, I think, they came together at certain times of the year to make takonos, to see how to help Yidden in their way of life. And then was developed what is known today as the Heta Iske. The Heta Iske is based 100% on the Iske of the Gemara. It's based, in theory, it is again 50% halva, 50% is being lent from the money provider to the worker, 50% is lent, 50% is a pikadon, is given, and the person who takes the money doesn't have responsibility of it. But two new clauses were added to assure the fact that the money provider would always get his 100% money back, his keren, the 100% which he lent, which he gave or lent, whatever it was, and he would always get profits. How did they do that? So before we go look at it inside, I'll explain it Baal Peh. They added two legal clauses to this Iske arrangement. Normal circumstances, if on the old way of Iske, if I gave somebody money and we became partners, and he came back to me, let's say I made it for 3 months. You invest in fruit and apples and oranges, and you buy and sell and buy and sell. After 3 months, the partnership is over. Please, I want the figures. So the man, after 3 months, comes back to me and he says, we invested, whatever it was, 100 euros, and I bought and I sold and I made profit and I made here some, I made loss, and he gave me the fine total with the figures, and that was the end of the story. If we'd made profits 50-50, if we made losses, then we had to arrange it 50-50. He was believed because he is believed about the pikadon. Normal circumstances, he says, you gave me the money to invest, I invested it, and that would be the end of the story. Here, in order to make things difficult, that the money, the person who worked, should be able to say there was any loss to the 100% of the keren, to the initial investment, they added a clause. They said as follows: I am giving money as a iske. That means 50% I'm lending to you, 50% is a pikadon, but you, the person who received the funds, will only be believed when you tell me what happened to the funds if you can provide 2 kosher witnesses who know what happened to the funds which I gave you. I gave you once, let's say 100 euros or 100,000 euros. Now, if you want to come back after 3 months and tell me that this 100,000 euros I invested in this and in that and something else, and at the end of the day there was a loss of 10, 20%, you'll only be believed if you can provide me with 2 kosher witnesses who know exactly what you did with the money and what happened with it. Now, how is the money provider going to provide kosher witnesses? In order to provide kosher witnesses which will come along and testify that they know what happened to the original 100,000 euros, they have had to be there from the beginning. When I invested the 100,000, I gave the 100,000 euros to the gentleman who took it. They have to follow him all the way through, see what he does with the money, see what he buys, see what he sells, and continuously have to be there until the end of the partnership agreement. And then they have to be able to testify that this is the matzah, this is what is the end of the line, because we followed him from the beginning all the way to the end, and we know clearly that this is the matzah, this is what the bottom line is. Can the money provider, the man who's working with the money bring such witnesses? In theory, he can. In theory, he has to be able to. He accepted upon himself that he will only be believed to talk about the 100% when he provides witnesses. So he has to look after himself, to take people, to watch him take the money, walk home with the money, walk to the market to the money to see what he did with the money, what he bought, to be with him all the time, to see that he sold and he bought and he sold and he bought and he sold and he bought till the end of 3 months, and then these witnesses have to come back and say what happened with the money.
Actually, the trust towards him is limited and subject to 2 controllers, but those 2 controllers can be joined with him in each and every move.
Absolutely.
Buying and sell.
They could be
don't
there.
have to be present, but upon each movement, buying or selling or using the money, they have to sign it as well.
They don't have to sign it. They have to say that they can see what happened to the money.
Otherwise, they cannot control.
Right. So they have to be there.
Which is practically impossible.
Okay.
It's very, very difficult.
We haven't finished yet.
It's very difficult. That means sometimes they used to add in who the witnesses had to be. In some old Heta Iskas you find has to be kosher witnesses. Who do the witnesses have to be? One has to be Rabbi Lieberman, and one has to be Gershom Best Broder. That's what they used to write. They used to write the Rov and the Shamas. And since the Rov and the Shamas were normally busy with better things than running after people to see what they did, it was practically impossible that the Rov and the Shamas would be able to come back at the end of the 3-month period and say what happened to the 100%. If the person who took the money couldn't produce 2 kosher witnesses, then he wasn't believed to say there was any loss. He had the possibility to provide 2 kosher witnesses if he had bothered, but he didn't bother usually. He wasn't able to find 2 people who were going to sit around with him the whole day and see what was going on. So therefore, he had lost his word of mouth, his belief, that he lost his nemonos to see whether he was, to say what happened. So in that case, I can't bring my witnesses. I'm not believed to say there was any loss to the actual initial investment. If I cannot believe, then I have to pay the whole thing back. That was the first condition which was added in to make an iska, a heta iska, and to provide safeguarding that the original investment would always be returned 100%, and the person who did the work couldn't get out of this really and say that there was losses, because unless you provide witnesses, you're not believed.
You could still reduce the profit to the minimum.
Okay, then we'll talk about the profit. Since the investor he wasn't happy with just getting his 100% of money back, he wanted profits, so they added another clause. They added a second clause which says when the man who's running the business will want to talk about how much profit there was or there wasn't, he has to make an oath, he has to make a shavua in front of Beis Din, holding a holy object, a shavua chamura, a very strict oath, with a Nikitas Chayfetz, holding a tefillin or a Sefer Torah in front of Beis Din. If the gentleman will come along and be prepared to take an oath in front of Beis Din that there were no profits, he's believed. So we have a scenario at the end of the time, when the time is up, after 3 months, let's say, and the two people meet again. The money provider asks the worker, what's going on? So the worker says, witnesses I don't have. Oh, so okay, so you owe me 100%. What about the profits? Are you prepared to make an oath in front of Beis Din exactly how much profit there was? So the fellow used to say that, I don't want to start with making oaths, because making a shvua in front of Beis Din with a Sefer Torah in your hand is very, very, very serious. It's a very serious thing to do, even about the truth. There's a Tshuvas Chasam Sofer, and the Gemara talks about, even about the truth, you have to be very, very careful when you come and make a shavua. If somebody comes to make a shavua in Beis Din, he's warned duly and read his rights, as they were, that what risks he's taking if he makes, by mistake even, a false shavua. And most Frumme Yidden, or 90% of Frumme Yidden, will not make an oath, even if it's the truth. So therefore, he says, you know what, I prefer not to make an oath. Okay, so then we have to divide the profit. You're not prepared to tell me how much it was. So at the beginning, they used to write as follows. If you talk about profit, the money man who's working has to make an oath. But I, the money provider, am prepared to take 10%, let's say, of the profits of the 100%, if he doesn't want to make an oath. I believe him if he tells me that my portion of the profits is 10%. I'm happy with the 10%. And you know what? If you made 50%, you can keep the rest. I'm happy. I'm mistapek b'mu'at. I'm prepared to take only 10%. Any other profits, which possibly might have arisen from our business deal together, you can keep. But 10% is what I need, and then I will say to you, you don't have to make the oath in Beis Din.
Isn't it a kind of a circumvention of defining the ribis?
Because we give the possibility, in principle, to the man who took the money to clarify what actually happened, and if he brings edus, witnesses, and if he swears in Beis Din, there will be no definite. He might not have to pay even the Karen. He might not have to pay all the. He might tell me there was no profit. So there was no definite impossible situation where he was forced to have to pay 100% plus profits. Then it's not ribas. If he wants to get out of it, bring your witnesses, make a shua in front of Beis Din, and laugh you all the way to the bank, as they say.
Today, if you make business, you have bookkeeping. You put in books coming in and coming out.
Right.
Is that enough? A bookkeeper can show all the figures.
Well, in the Heta Iska, in its original state, didn't talk about bookkeepers. They said it's either you make a shavua in Beis Din, or you give me the profits which we agree upon. The profits are called, in the terminology of halacha, it is the schum, the amount, hit pashrut, which we agree on, that I'm happy with. His pasha compromise, a compromise 10%. I'm compromise the rest of my profit you can have. So bookkeeping wasn't added into it. I've seen today in modern Shtore Iske, where it says either the person who works with the money makes a shvua, or he brings from a certified bookkeeper the ins and outs.
People, bookkeeping, maybe off the books, he did arrange with the guidance.
It's true. You don't have to accept that.
It's better to be
If you want to be sure about your money, then of course
globally.
Do it yourself.
But
You won't-
What about if they agree before they actually give money and the other one takes the money? If he agrees that he says, I want my minimum 10%.
right.
You do whatever you want. Is that acceptable?
What do you mean you do whatever you want?
You make a profit of whatever profit you can make.
Yeah.
I'm giving you this money and
Yeah.
I want the capital plus 10% back when you finish the install, when you
Right.
finish the business.
Right, but it has to be a business deal where they're partners in. They have to be partners. That's exactly what he says. We're going into business together. An iska,
Yes.
50% is my money, 50% is your money, because I lent it to you, it's yours, and you'll invest in a business deal, and we'll share the profits equally. But there are two conditions which say that you'll only be believed about the Karen if you bring witnesses, and you'll only be believed about the profit if you make a shvur in Bezdin. If you can't do either of these, I'll be happy with the 10% profit, and the rest is yours. That's what it says in the Heta
That is,
Iske.
And the
after-
10%
After the things went through.
That's correct.
But I'm saying if they agree in advance about this kind of deal.
They do agree in advance about this
No,
time.
they agreed on the partnership.
And on these two conditions, they have to be stipulated at the
Okay,
beginning.
two conditions. Just forget about the two conditions.
No,
They
that
just-
makes it
They
not
just
illegal.
agree, they just, like banks do today, yes? We give you the money, and you pay us money back with 5% annual interest.
Right, you're not allowed to
I
do
don't care
that.
how much money you make out of it.
No, you have to agree. It has to be written in the agreement that we go into partnership, and in principle, we're 50% as partners. And otherwise,
It's
it's
not allowed.
not-
In principle, it's not allowed. So why they come banks do it?
one second.
You can't do it.
Banks, you're talking about in Eretz Yisrael.
Yes,
They all work on Heta Iskes.
They do it.
so it's not partnership.
It is, it is, definitely is. Well, we might in Mitzvah get there today, we might not, we'll
There's
see.
one thing the Ruf has to make clear. The 10% is on the 100 or is it only on the
Okay, we'll
50?
soon come to that. We'll soon come to that.
After
Okay,
deducting his 50, he wants the 10.
Okay,
right. If you brought it up now, we'll talk about it now.
10% is the norm today.
You'd like to meet somebody, I can arrange it. I know lots of people, and I know the rates that people pay.
Okay.
Okay, so as Mr. De Jong pointed out correctly, the 10% which the money provider is taking, what he's saying is that in principle there was really 20% made on the money. 10% is mine because 50% is my money, and 10% is yours. Okay? When we talk about I'm prepared to take 10% for my 50%, because 50% was a pikadon, was my money, and I'm entitled to 50% of the profits. So what I'm saying to you is that I'm prepared to take 10% because I presume there was 20% profit, and therefore you keep your 20. If there was 25, you can keep 15, I don't mind. I'm happy with 10. So the question is there a limit? Is the sky the limit? Can I be a loan shark and lend you amount of money and say, every day I want 1%. I'm lending it to you for a week. Every day I want 1%, which means I'm charging you 365% interest a year. That's what I'm saying, that you're making a killing. Something which most people don't know about. That really, I'm only lending you for a week, so I'm only taking 5% or 7%. But what I'm actually saying is that you have the capability to turn around this money in such a grand way that you could be able, in principle, to give 365, 700. That you could make on it 700% profit in a year. So that's a question which is discussed. What is the limit? Now, there was a time, if you ask a Belzer Chassid, the Belzer Chassidim know that in the time of one of the 2 or 3 Rebbes ago, he said 16% is the most you're allowed to take. 16% was the most in the Heta Iska you were allowed to take, because at that time it seems that the economy was in such a way that you could make 32%. and you're allowed to take 16. So anything more than that is an impossibility. And if it's an impossibility, then it's not a proper agreement. Okay?
It has to do with the inflation.
It's to do with the matzav of business, exactly how things were going in those days. So there's no proof from the fact that somebody once said 16%. It's not a pi Kabbalah or pi Sod. That was the matzav in those days.
16% a year? 16%?
Yeah, 60% a year. That was the matzav in those days. No, it's okay. I was once in a Din Torah representing somebody in London, and he had large loans. He had given large loans and large percents of interest, and it come to a massive amount. And the Bezdin said, "This whole shtar iska is ribbis." They said, "There's no way anybody can make such a large amount of money."
With the Tana that you are not coming with Yadayim Nekiyot.
That's right. He said, "This is a ribbis agreement, not a het iska. There's no way any business can make it. So what you're claiming is basically ribbis, because if it's possible in the business world to generate so much profit, okay, you're a partner, and you can do it." So some people say today it's according to the bank, not the bank rate, the rate of interest which credit card companies take.
Which is
25% a year or something, 24% annual interest rate, something like that. 1.5 a month or something. So whatever it is today, that's what some poskim suggest. There is a great Dayan in town who's a big businessman, and he says the sky is the limit, because if I invest in a property and I turn it around, I can make so much money, and if I do it again, he claims there is no limit. Other Rabbonim have said practically, if somebody is coming to you and wants to take your money and give you large amounts, much more than the bank rate, then the whole thing stinks. And you're not only not going to get any profit, you're not even going to get your money back. You're just wasting your money by giving it to anybody who offers you large amount of profit. You're never going to see it anyway.
The question is, when someone makes a tax because you become a partner, are you supposed to hear at least approximately what the business plan is, or we don't have to go?
No, you don't have to go into it. Now, let's read a shtar heta iska, a regular shtar iska, in order, because it's rather important. Could you give out one to whoever's on your side? We go read through it, in order that we should understand once and for all what we're doing. Anybody else? Are there enough?
Yeah.
Everybody has?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the shtar iska, which was made up, and it reads as follows: Moide ani, people who get up in the morning. And it's I agree, I hereby agree, and you put your name in here if you're the one who's taking the money. Moide ani, you can fill one in if you want, just for the fun of it, if you know your name, that is. Chosum mata, who's signed below. Moide ani chosum mata, the one who's signed below, the one who's taking the money. Shekibalti, that I accepted liyodi into my hands. Me'es is from the money provider, you put his name. Sach is the amount, you put how much I've taken. But Teres Iska means that it's an agreement that I'm going to invest. Le means for so how many months? Miyom dulamata, from the date at the bottom. For his chayavti as atzmi, I obligated myself. Shakol schoire toiva, any good merchandise, shetehei niras be'enai, which I'll understand. Shehi hayoyse kroiva laharviach boy, which is the easiest and the best business deal. Mechuyev ani liknois, I am obliged to buy the best possible deals. Ba'ad hasach haniska, with the money which I mentioned above. V'heim koidmim lema'oisai, and that money which I accepted from the money provider, I am obliging myself to use this money for the first best deal which comes up. In other words, if I see a great deal, I can't say, oh, the money provider, I'll put away and I'll use my own money and I'll invest in it. You're not allowed to do that. So you oblige yourself to be honest and to invest the money which you've taken, the best possible business deal. All the profits which HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give me from that merchandise, half will belong to me. And the second half, whoever gave me the money, whose name is mentioned above. V'chein chas v'sholem lehefsed, if God forbid there's any loss, hu chelek kechelek. It's half and half. That's a regular iska. So far, this is a proper iska. Miyad la'acha kalois, as soon as we finish the time, mahayoim de lemata, it means after the period of time which we've already accepted, it's a month or 2 months or 3 months or a day or a week, ani mechuyev, I'm obliged lahachzir, to return to the man who gave me the money, haniskel el, who's mentioned above, es hakeren, the original investment, v'gam chetzi revach shaloi, and half of the profit which is his. I have to give it back to him because we're partners in v'loi. Now the two conditions are added on. V'loi yeheli nemonos loy mehefsadati. Sorry? Elo al pi shnei edim ksherim. If I bring two, I won't be believed to say that there was a loss to the keren unless I bring 2 kosher witnesses. But if I want to say that when I'm talking about the profit that there was no profit, or how much the profit was, there was profit, but how much it was, I have only I'm only believed when I make a shvur. For ulam, there is a tznai hoya beinenu that we have agreed she'im ertze, if I will wish litin loy, to give to the man I mentioned above, ba'ad chelek revach shalei, for his portion of the profit, b'chol, here you have to write shavua or chodesh or yoim, sach, how much he's prepared to accept for every month or whatever it is. If I agree, we agreed that if I'll give him 10% for a month, let's say, for argument's sake, ozai ein olai shum tvi, he has no further claims against me, ki hamoisa shaykh li levad. The rest, the extra is for me, afilu yivuru shayi revach, but even if it will be, even if it's clear that there was more profit, I'm allowed to keep it. Then it's added on, v'chol din teres nemonos lebal hashtar. That means, if there's an argument whether I have paid the money back or I haven't given the money back, the person who keeps this piece of paper, which is a money provider, he's believed to say whether I've returned the funds with profit or not. Af la'achaz mana peroin. Although the time of paying back the chov has already passed, and in normal circumstances I would be able to come and say, well, of course we agreed that I'll give you this and this and this, but I paid you already. So here I add on that I give him the money, the person who's keeping this piece of paper, who is the money provider, he is believed about to say that I haven't given him back. V'kibalti schar amolai, and I've been paid for my work. You see this extra piece here?
Deducting net from the profit.
Yeah. That's right. That means that I've already accepted, I've already been paid. And then you write the date. And then it says the chasim of the loiva, the person who's borrowing the money, and the malva if you want, and b'fanenu eidim, if you want to add in witnesses, you can add in witnesses as well, but you don't have to add in witnesses. The main thing is that this is filled in properly. And then, if you fill this in properly before you make a deal between 2 parties, you are covered for this deal as long as both parties have read it and understood it. Now, you have to understand it. Now, it's not easy to understand, and most people don't know how to fill it in. If I give you one of these by yourself, it took me also half an hour to work out exactly who's talking and who's in and ahead, because it doesn't come with any instructions.
Okay.
There's no instruction on the back side. Yeah, okay, so I'm saying I agree that once you've read it through and you've heard this year, you can understand how to fill it in.
Yes.
The question is, what happens if you don't understand, but you manage to fill it in somehow, and you sign it? In halacha, even if you didn't understand, if you put your name at the bottom, we presume that you did understand what you've written.
Unless you are writing downstairs, below, I read it, I understood it, and accepted it.
Okay, then there's no question about it. But in Jewish law, even if you just signed your name at the bottom, we presume that you do understand what you're writing. We presume that people will not sign their name at the bottom of a document which they don't understand. Okay, so therefore, if you've signed it, we have no problems about it. The question is, what about a verbal heter iske? What happens if I'm coming to you and say, look, lend me €1,000 just for a week, and I haven't got one of these things available. So I come to you and say, lend me €1,000. I'll give you at the end of the week 1,001. Ribbis, to be according to heter iske. You say according to heter iske, which means you mean whatever the agreement is, that the 1,000 which I'm giving is profit, and the two extra clauses are included in it, is that good enough? Is it good enough to say that verbal heter iska? So let me tell you a story which happened. Once upon a time, there were two gentlemen in London, and they were very big business people, very in serious business dealings, and limited companies and unlimited. There was a proper business deals, and after the passing of one of the people who accepted the money, he accepted a large amount of money, let's say $1 million. The money provider gave, I think, $1 million, and the question was, he claimed from the inheritors of the person who took the money that he was, let me say this, I got it wrong. The story was as follows: the person who passed away was the money, he was the money provider. The person who passed away was a money provider. The person who took the money was alive and kicking. He was well, Baruch Hashem. The Yorshim, the people who inherited the money provider, claimed that our father gave money to you and became a partner in your business dealings, and since you made lots of money, you owe us so much and so much. That was the claim. The person who took the money said, no, he wasn't a partner. He gave me money, but it was according to Heta Iska. And therefore, although I made millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of profit, but I agreed with him to give him a percentage. But no, he was a partner, true partner. No, it was Heta Iska. So they said to the claimant said to the man who took the money, do you have a Heta Iska from our dear father? Do you have one of these pieces of paper? No. It was a verbal agreement, he said. When he gave me the money, it was a verbal agreement that it will be according to Heta Iska. No Bezdin in London wanted to touch the case, because the two people who were involved, the family of the person who gave the money and the person who was still alive, they were scared to get involved with these sort of people. They were maybe had a large influence on the Dayanim. For some reason, it ended up in the High Court in London, in the Old Bailey. And each side had to provide expert witnesses. What was the argument in court? One side that said that our father was a religious man, and he was, and he would never have agreed to do an iska verbally without writing it down. The other gentleman, who was a defendant, said, your father agreed to it verbally. So there was an argument in the High Court, and each side had to bring expert witnesses, rabbis, who would say whether a verbal agreement is permitted or not.
Support his version.
To support his version of events. The person who took the money wanted to bring a proof that a verbal agreement is okay. And therefore, although there was no documentation, it was a verbal agreement, and he owes 4% a year, whatever it was. The other side said our father was such a holy man, and he definitely wouldn't have done a verbal agreement, and therefore he's irregular. And each one brought expert witnesses. I was one of the expert witnesses.
Well, if
Makes no difference.
if
I'll tell you that. Okay, it does make
if
sense.
in the past
Makes it-
these two
makes
gentlemen have done other businesses
Yeah,
which
they
have
done
been
other business.
concluded,
Yeah.
and every time you saw that after the business profit was paid out according to 4% or whatever,
However, there was Heta Iska
then you have
written.
to. Then no, not a head. It's you see.
There was a
that
Heta Iska written. At certain times, there was Heta Iska written
but
between them.
let's say that you also see that many deals were done between them, where the profit you could prove that the profit was limited to the 4%.
Right.
Then the Shana Shtivim Chazoka that this one was also on that basis.
Just like this.
No. Why? I do 10 deals with you, and number 11
Well,
will not be in the
The
same
truth
way.
of the matter is that if you look in Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch says clearly that a verbal agreement is perfectly okay. I gave in. I was the one who had to give expert.
How can you force me?
One second. Expert witnesses. There was a one rov. No, you don't have to have Adam. You have to have. written that there was it was a verbal agreement to be heter iska at 4%, whatever it was. Now, the two expert witnesses I gave in that it's a kun to halacha, it's okay. The other fellow said the kun to halacha, it's not okay. I said to him, you're telling lies. I said to him, I wrote to him, what's Hakstein copyright? In Shulchan Aruch,
That's a shloshim yom, if you don't say that.
I said in kun to Shulchan Aruch, in Kitzur Shulchan Aruch it says clearly, verbal agreement is okay. Do you agree that it says that? Do you agree that there are poskim who agree to that? He had to agree with me that there are poskim. So what are you saying? So I asked him, how can you give into court that a verbal agreement is not binding according to the Jewish law? So he said, since there are poskim who say it's not good, and this man was a religious man, I'm saying that he didn't do that. So I said to him, well, how can you say such a thing? How do you know what he did and what he didn't do? So he told me, well, his family told me that he wouldn't do it. I said to him, you're not being honest. Maybe his family told you that, but that's not the law. We're asking you for your opinion about the law. So in the end, we agreed on a combined text which said that according to Jewish authorities, some Jewish authorities says you are allowed to, and some say you're not allowed to. And more than that we cannot say about what actually happened. Now what happened in the court case was that the person who took the money, he really had a hard time in court. In other words, the lawyers for the claimants really drilled him, and he was so shaken up.
But it seems that you protected him. You were on his side.
I was on the side of the Kodesh Baruch Hu. I was on the side of saying the truth, what the halacha says. I'll tell you that. And Lemaisa, what happened was that he settled out of court. Okay, I think that's enough for today.